Dr. Thompson looked intently at Richard Sterling and said something he would never forget. "Who is caring for your father? Because whoever it is, they're accomplishing what my entire neurology team couldn't achieve in 8 months. He's stable. He hasn't worsened. And with ALS, my friend, not worsening is a miracle." Richard froze. He was the CEO of a pharmaceutical company. He knew every statistic about amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease. He knew the progression was relentless, 12 to 18 months from diagnosis to total dependence. His father, Mr. Ernest, had been diagnosed 2 years ago. He should have been much worse. But when the neurologist opened the latest scans, something didn't make sense. Mr. Ernest's respiratory capacity hadn't declined. The muscles in his hands, although immobile, showed no additional atrophy. Even the dysphagia, the difficulty swallowing, seemed controlled. Richard had hired the best caregivers in Mexico, nurses specializing in neurodegenerative diseases, physical therapists trained at American universities, medical equipment that cost over $50,000, and a housekeeper named Lucy Miller, who earned $200 a week to clean the house. If you've ever felt that money can't buy what really matters, you'll understand this story. Richard Sterling was 42 years old, and he had built an empire. His pharmaceutical company grossed $30 million a year. He lived in a 10,000-square-foot mansion in Bel Air, the most exclusive neighborhood in Los Angeles. He had a driver, a personal chef, and a team of 5 employees who kept his life running perfectly. And he had no time for anything that really mattered. His father, Mr. Ernest Sterling, was the one who paid for his medical school. He sold the small clinic he had in Phoenix, Arizona, so Richard could study at Stanford. He worked 16 hours a day for years to give his son the opportunities he never had. Richard graduated as a doctor, but he never practiced. He saw more money on the business side. He founded a drug distribution company that became a manufacturer. It grew, it expanded, and he forgot to call his father until that day, 2 years ago, when his father called him and said in a trembling voice, "I have ALS, son. The doctors gave me 2 years." Richard brought his father to Los Angeles immediately. He installed him in an adapted room on the ground floor of the mansion. He hired the specialists. He bought the equipment. He did everything money could do, but he wasn't there. Meetings, trips, investors, international expansion, always something more urgent than sitting 5 minutes next to the man who sacrificed everything for him. The progression was brutal. In 6 months, Mr. Ernest went from walking with a cane to being permanently in a wheelchair. His speech, once firm and clear, became slurred, then almost unintelligible. The hands that had saved lives as a cardiac surgeon became completely immobile, and Richard hired more specialists, more equipment, more nurses. 3 professional nurses tried. The first lasted 2 weeks. Technical, cold, following protocols to the letter. Mr. Ernest hated her. The second was better, but resigned after a month. She couldn't stand to see the frustration in the eyes of a man who could do nothing but think. The third simply didn't show up after 15 days. That's when Lucy started taking care of him. Not because anyone asked, not because they paid her more, simply because she knew. Lucy Miller was 48 years old and had worked as a housekeeper since she was 20. Her hands were calloused from years of cleaning other people's houses, a tired but kind face, and a secret that no one in the Sterling mansion knew. Her husband died of ALS 6 years earlier. She knew every phase of the disease, every frustration, every fear, every small victory that outsiders couldn't see. And when she saw Mr. Ernest for the first time, sitting in that chair, looking at his own hands as if they belonged to a stranger, she saw her husband. So she started. Without warning, without asking permission, she arrived at 7 in the morning for her cleaning shift. But before grabbing the broom, she went to Mr. Ernest's room. "Good morning, Mr. Ernest. Did you sleep well? Let's do the exercises." The nurses ignored her. She was just the housekeeper. What did she know about ALS? But Mr. Ernest didn't ignore her, because she did something that no nurse did. She looked him in the eyes. The nurses looked at the equipment, at the monitors, at the spreadsheets. Lucy looked at the man. 3 weeks after she started, Richard noticed something strange. His father seemed different, not better. ALS doesn't allow that, but less lost, less desperate. "Are you all right, Dad?" Richard asked on one of the rare occasions when he was home before 10 at night. Mr. Ernest could no longer speak, but he moved his eyes toward the window, where Lucy was cleaning, and tried to smile. Richard didn't understand, and didn't have time to investigate. He had a meeting in Phoenix the next day, but Dr. Thompson understood. When he arrived for the routine quarterly checkup, he expected to find a much worse patient. ALS gives no truce. In 8 months, the deterioration should have been significant, but it wasn't. He checked the respiratory capacity. Stable. He checked the weight. No significant loss. He checked the reflexes. Minimal, as expected, but not worse. "How is this possible?" he murmured to himself as he examined the previous tests. Richard was in the room, trying not to look desperate. The doctor closed the file. "Who takes care of him when I'm not here?" "The nurses," Richard replied. "I have a specialized team." Dr. Thompson looked around. He didn't see any nurses. He saw Lucy, bringing a glass with a special straw, adjusting the pillow behind Mr. Ernest's back with a delicacy he hadn't seen in months. "Who is she?" "Our housekeeper. She's doing something more than cleaning," the doctor said. And Richard, for the first time in months, really paid attention, because Dr. Thompson was right. Lucy was doing something. She just never said it. Every day, after she finished cleaning, she stayed 5 more hours. She didn't clock in. She didn't charge overtime. She simply stayed, and she did physical therapy. Passive movements in Mr. Ernest's legs and arms, one by one, gently. "Preventing atrophy," she whispered. "I know it hurts, but it will help." She did breathing exercises 3 times a day. "Breathe with me, Mr. Ernest. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale." She had an old folder made of craft paper, with pages written by hand. 14 different exercises. She had learned them 6 years ago, when she cared for her husband. This binder, it was her manual, her guide, her most precious treasure, and no one knew it existed until Dr. Thompson began to investigate. He didn't say anything that day, but 2 things bothered him. First, an ALS patient who hadn't worsened in 8 months. Second, a housekeeper who didn't seem like a housekeeper when she was near the patient. She seemed like an expert. So he did something doctors rarely do. He asked to come back. Unannounced. "I need to see his routine on a normal day," he told Richard Sterling. "Don't tell anyone I'm coming." Richard agreed. He still didn't understand, but he trusted the doctor who had been caring for his father for 2 years, and 3 days later, Dr. Thompson returned. At 11 in the morning, without warning, he entered silently, and he saw. Lucy Miller was on the floor, kneeling beside Mr. Ernest's wheelchair. She was holding his hands, hands that hadn't moved in months, hands that were dead weight, but she held them as if they were alive. "Let's do the fingers now, Mr. Ernest," she said softly. "I'm going to bend them. You're going to try to feel. You don't need to move them. Just need to remember that they're still yours." And she bent each finger, slowly, with infinite care. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, something that made Dr. Thompson freeze. Mr. Ernest was crying, not from pain, from gratitude, because someone was touching his hands, as if he was still human. If you've watched this far without feeling anything, you might not have a soul. But if you felt a twinge in your chest, you know exactly what this story means, and it's not over yet. Dr. Thompson didn't enter. He didn't want to interrupt. He stayed in the doorway, observing, and he saw something else, something that changed everything. After the exercises, Lucy took a piece of paper with large letters, the alphabet. From A to Z, and below, simple words: yes, no, pain, water, thank you. Now we're going to practice, she said in a soft voice. You blink once for A, twice for B, and that's how we're going to give you your voice. Again, Mr. Ernest began to blink, and Lucy translated with endless patience: blinks, blink, G, blink, R, blink, 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 A. Dr. Thompson understood what Mr. Ernest was spelling: G-R-A-T-I-A-S. Thank you. This housekeeper was doing what medicine couldn't. She wasn't curing ALS. No one can. But she was giving something more important: dignity. She was telling Mr. Ernest, you still matter. You're still human. You still have a voice, even if it's through blinks. And it was in that moment that Dr. Thompson realized the reason Mr. Ernest hadn't worsened wasn't the expensive medications, it wasn't the imported equipment, it wasn't the specialized nurses who lasted 2 weeks. It was a 48-year-old woman in a blue uniform and yellow rubber gloves who stayed 5 extra hours every day without charging a cent, because she knew what it was like to see the person you love trapped inside their own body. And in that moment, the doctor made a decision. He was going to talk to Richard, not as a doctor talking about treatment, but as a human being talking about miracles, because miracles exist, and some wear a housekeeper's uniform. Dr. Thompson waited for Lucy to finish the exercises and leave the room. Then he called Richard for a conversation, not in the exam room, in the library, far from everyone. Richard, do you know what's happening here? My father is stable. Your father is much more than stable. He is living, not just existing. Someone is giving him something that I can't prescribe and you can't buy. What is it? Hope. Richard frowned. He still didn't understand. So the doctor told him everything. What he saw, the exercises, the blink communication, the passive movements, the craft paper binder with handwritten exercises. Your housekeeper is doing professional-level physical therapy, Dr. Thompson said. And when I say professional, I'm not exaggerating. She's doing things I would see in a neurological rehabilitation unit in Boston. Richard was silent. How does she know how to do this? The doctor shook his head. I don't know, but I need to find out. Because whatever she's doing, it's working. And in 30 years of neurology, I have never seen an ALS patient stabilized for 8 months, with no measurable progression. He paused. Richard, you need to understand what I'm saying. This doesn't happen. ALS doesn't give breaks. It progresses, always, but your father, he's resisting. And the only variable that's changed is her. Richard felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. Not the corporate curiosity of a CEO analyzing numbers, but the human curiosity of a son who didn't know the person saving his father. Who is Lucy Miller? And he was about to discover something that would change everything. 2 days later, Richard did something he never did. He came home at 10 in the morning. He didn't tell anyone. He simply entered quietly through the side door and went straight to his father's room, and he saw Lucy was there, but she wasn't cleaning. She was beside the chair, with Mr. Ernest tilted slightly forward. In her hands, a device that Richard didn't recognize, a small, portable suction machine connected to a thin tube. She was suctioning saliva with the precision of an ICU nurse. There you go, Mr. Ernest, all done. I know it's uncomfortable, but you know you need it. Mr. Ernest blinked twice, their code for yes. I know. Richard froze in the doorway, observing, unseen, and then he saw something else. Lucy pulled up a chair, sat down in front of Mr. Ernest, at the same eye level as him. I'm going to tell you about my day, she said in a soft voice. because you can't tell me about yours. But I know you hear me, and I know it helps." And she began to talk about small things, the bus ride, the daughter who called, the new recipe she wanted to try, things that didn't matter to anyone, but mattered to a man who could do nothing but listen because she treated him as a person, not as a patient. And that's what broke Richard. He didn't enter, he didn't want to interrupt, but for the first time in 2 years, he truly saw his father, not as a medical problem to be solved, not as a financial liability, but as a lonely man who needed someone to talk to him as if he still mattered. And the person doing that was the housekeeper he paid $2,000 a week. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about how much money he'd spent, about how many specialists he'd hired, how much equipment he had purchased, and how a woman in a blue uniform had accomplished more with patience and time than he had with millions of dollars. The next day, he made a decision. He was going to talk to Lucy, not as her boss, but as the son of a man she was saving. And when he discovered the truth about who she was, he would never be the same. But before Richard could do anything, Dr. Thompson made his own decision. Something about that appointment just wouldn't leave his mind. In 30 years of treating ALS patients, he had never seen stability for 8 consecutive months. Never. So, he did something unorthodox. He called Richard 3 days after the appointment, not to discuss medication, not to adjust treatment. "I need to investigate who's taking care of your father when I'm not there." Richard was confused. "Investigate? The nurses have impeccable credentials. Graduates from the best universities, internationally certified." "I'm not questioning their credentials," the doctor said. "I'm trying to understand a medical miracle, and miracles always have a source. I need to find that source." Richard agreed, but he didn't understand. 2 days later, Dr. Thompson arrived at the Sterling mansion unannounced. It was 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. He told the receptionist he had forgotten some equipment on his last visit. A lie, but a necessary one, because he didn't want anyone changing the routine. He entered silently, passed through the living room, through the marble hallways, to Mr. Ernest's adapted room on the ground floor. And then he heard it. A woman's voice, soft, firm, counting in Spanish. "Uno, Mr. Ernest. Take a deep breath. Dos. Hold it. Tres. Now, exhale slowly. Very good. Again." The doctor approached the door without making a sound and peeked through the crack. Lucy was there, but she wasn't cleaning. She was standing beside Mr. Ernest with her hands on his chest, feeling his breathing, monitoring each inhalation like a respiratory therapist would. Dr. Thompson froze. This wasn't improvisation. It was technique, professional. He recognized the exercises. They were the same ones he recommended, the same ones that cost $150 per session at specialized clinics. And a housekeeper was doing it perfectly. He didn't go in. He didn't want to interrupt, but he took his cell phone out of his pocket and started recording. Because if no one believed him, he would need proof. Lucy finished the breathing exercises. Then she went to an old cloth bag that was in the corner of the room. The doctor watched. She took something out of it, a small, portable device with a thin tube connected. Dr. Thompson recognized it immediately. It was a suction machine used for patients with severe dysphagia to remove saliva that they can't swallow. Professional medical equipment. And this woman in a blue uniform was using it like she had done it 1,000 times, because she had. "Now, I'm going to do the suction, Mr. Ernest," Lucy said in a quiet voice. "It will be quick. I know you don't like it, but you know you need it. If saliva accumulates, it will suffocate you, and I won't let that happen." Mr. Ernest blinked twice. "Yes, I know." She introduced the tube delicately. With millimeter precision, correct angle, exact depth, Suctioned for 5 seconds, removed it, cleaned the tube, repeated on the other side. Perfect procedure. Dr. Thompson was recording everything, but his hands were shaking. Not from nervousness, from professional shock. That woman knew exactly what she was doing. When Lucy finished, she cleaned the device with 70% alcohol, put it back in the bag, and then she did something that made the doctor swallow hard. She took Mr. Ernest's hands that were completely immobile, and started doing passive movements, finger by finger, joint by joint. "We're going to maintain mobility, Mr. Ernest. Even if you can't move on your own, I'm going to move for you. Because when the day comes and you feel like shaking someone's hand, your fingers will remember how to do it." And then something happened that Dr. Thompson had never seen in an ALS patient in such an advanced stage. Mr. Ernest's index finger moved, just a millimeter, maybe 2, but it moved. Lucy saw it and smiled with tears in her eyes. "You did it, Mr. Ernest. You moved. I knew you could do it. Your brain is still sending the command. It just needed someone to remind your muscles how to obey." Dr. Thompson stopped recording, put away his cell phone, and left the mansion silently. He didn't leave because he had seen enough. He left because he needed time to process the impossible. That night, he watched the video 5 times. Each time, he saw more details. The way she positioned Mr. Ernest's body in the chair to avoid pressure sores. The way she adjusted the headrest to keep the airway open. The care with which she did circulatory massage on his legs to prevent thrombosis. Every movement was intentional. Every gesture had a medical purpose. That woman wasn't improvising. She knew. But how? The next day, Dr. Thompson did something he had never done in 30 years of his career. He called Richard and asked for the data of all the employees who worked at the house. "I need their full names," he said, "and if possible, previous employment history." Richard found it strange, but he trusted the doctor. So, he sent everything. 3 registered nurses, 2 with master's degrees in neurological care, 1 with a specialization in degenerative diseases, and Lucy Miller, housekeeper, no training listed, references from 5 previous houses. All saying the same thing: hardworking, quiet, reliable, nothing about medical knowledge. Dr. Thompson stared at the name for long minutes. Lucy Miller. "Who are you?" He made a decision. He was going to find out. Not out of curiosity, but because if that woman had some method, some technique that was working where traditional medicine was failing, he needed to know. For Mr. Ernest, and for all the other patients he treated. So, he did something he never imagined he would do. He hired a private investigator, not to spy on her, but to understand who she was. And what the investigator discovered changed everything. Lucy Miller was a widow. Her husband, Robert Miller, died in 2018. Cause of death, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, terminal stage. She took care of him alone for 2 years, from diagnosis to his last breath. No nurses, no professional help, alone. And during those 2 years, she learned everything. She read every medical article she could find at the public library. She attended support groups where volunteer physical therapists taught care techniques. She even bought a used suction machine with her own money when her husband's dysphagia worsened. The same suction machine she was still using 6 years later, because she knew that one day someone would need it again. The investigator sent photos. One of them showed Lucy leaving a meeting of a support group for families of ALS patients. She still attended, even 6 years after her husband's death, not because she needed support, but because now she was the one supporting others. Dr. Thompson read the report 3 times. Each time, he felt his chest tighten more. That woman wasn't doing charity. She was honoring the man she loved. 2 days later, he called Richard. "We need to talk. In person. Today." Richard cancelled 2 meetings and went to the doctor's office. He expected bad news. He expected his father's stability to have ended, that the ALS had begun progressing again. But what Dr. Thompson said was completely different. "Your housekeeper isn't just a housekeeper." Richard frowned. "What do you mean?" "She's an empirical expert in ALS care. And she's doing for your father what I, with 30 years of neurology, can't do. She's giving him quality of life. She's slowing the progression. She's maintaining his dignity." The doctor opened his laptop. He showed Richard the video he had recorded. Richard watched in silence. When the video ended, Richard didn't say anything. He just looked at his own hands. "Did you know she was doing this?" Dr. Thompson asked. Richard shook his head. "I pay her to clean the house. I didn't know she was saving my father." The doctor closed the laptop. "Then you need to know something. That suction machine she's using, it's not from your house. It's hers, from her husband, who died of ALS 6 years ago." Richard lifted his head sharply. "What?" And Dr. Thompson told him everything. The husband, the 2 years of solitary care, the techniques she learned in pain, the support group she still attended. "She knows exactly what your father is feeling," the doctor said, "because she saw the person she loved go through the same thing. And now, she's using that pain to do good." Richard felt something break inside him. Not anger, not frustration, but deep shame. He had paid millions for treatments, bought imported equipment, hired specialists from around the world, and the person really saving his father was a woman who earned $2,000 a month and did everything for free, for love, for memory, for compassion. "I need to see her," Richard said with a hoarse voice. "I need to thank her." "No, doctor," Thompson said, "you need to do more than thank her. You need to understand what she's doing and why it's working." "How?" "Tomorrow. Come home at noon. Don't tell anyone, just observe. I'll be there too, and you'll see with your own eyes what money can't buy." Richard agreed. And the next day, at 11:45 in the morning, he parked his car 2 blocks from his house. He entered through the side door. He went silently to the hallway leading to his father's room. Dr. Thompson was already there, leaning against the wall, watching through the crack in the door. He motioned for Richard to approach, and when Richard looked inside the room, he saw something that would change everything. Lucy was kneeling on the floor, not because she was cleaning, but because she wanted to be at the same eye level as Mr. Ernest. She was holding his hands. Those hands that hadn't moved in 4 months. Those hands that had saved hundreds of lives in heart surgeries. Now completely inert. But she held them as if they were the most precious things in the world. "Let's do today's exercises. Mr. Ernest," she said in a calm voice. "First, the breathing. You know how it is. Breathe with me. 1, 2, 3. And she breathed deeply, exaggerating the movement, showing him. Mr. Ernest tried. Richard saw the effort on his father's face, the struggle to do something as simple as breathe. "Very good," Lucy said. "Now exhale, slowly, as I taught you. 1, 2, 3. And she exhaled, slowly, controlled. Mr. Ernest followed. Dr. Thompson whispered to Richard without taking his eyes off the scene. "She's doing professional-level respiratory therapy. This costs $150 per session at specialized clinics. And she does it 3 times a day, every day, for free." Richard couldn't speak. He just watched. Lucy finished the breathing exercises. Then she got up and went to a small table next to the bed. She picked something up, a laminated sheet, large, with letters. Dr. Thompson recognized it immediately. A communication board, but it wasn't a purchased board. It was handmade, with letters drawn on craft paper, then laminated to last. The complete alphabet from A to Z, and below, basic words: yes, no, pain, water, thank you, need help. "She created this herself," the doctor whispered. "Look at the handwriting. It's hers." Now let's practice communicating. Mr. Ernest, Lucy said, I know you have things to say, and I'm going to give you a voice. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no, and we'll spell letter by letter when you want to say something else. She positioned the sheet in front of him. Are you in pain today? Mr. Ernest blinked twice. No. Do you want water? 2 blinks. No. Do you want to tell me something? 1 blink. Yes. Lucy smiled. Then let's go. Point with your eyes, I'll follow. And then Richard saw something extraordinary. His father, a man who hadn't spoken in 6 months, began to communicate. His eyes moved to the left. Lucy followed. G, then down. R, left again. A. Dr. Thompson was recording everything again. But his hands were shaking because he knew what Mr. Ernest was spelling. Gratias. Gracias. Thank you. Lucy saw the complete word and her eyes filled with tears. You're welcome. Mr. Ernest, you don't need to thank me. I do this because you matter, because you still have so much to give to the world, even if the world can't see it. And then she did something that broke Richard completely. She leaned down and kissed Mr. Ernest's forehead. Like a daughter would, like someone who really loved that man would. Your son loves you, she whispered. I know he's busy. I know he doesn't come as often as you'd like, but he loves you. And one day, he'll realize that the time he didn't spend with you was the most wasted time of his entire life. Richard felt tears running down his face. Because she was right. He had wasted so much time, so many meetings that could have waited, so many trips that weren't urgent. All that money he made meant nothing compared to 5 minutes holding his father's hand, and a stranger, a woman he paid to clean the house, was giving his father what he never gave, presents. Dr. Thompson placed a hand on Richard's shoulder. You see it now, don't you? He said softly. She's not just caring for his body. She's caring for his soul. At that moment, Lucy glanced towards the doorway, and she saw Richard and the doctor. She didn't seem surprised. She didn't seem embarrassed. She just calmly stood up and walked towards them. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice steady. Dr. Thompson, are you here to tell me I shouldn't be doing this anymore? No, Richard said, his voice hoarse. I'm here to ask, why? Why do you do this? I don't pay you for this. I didn't ask you to. Why do you dedicate 5 hours a day caring for my father when you could be at home with your family? Lucy looked at Mr. Ernest, then back at Richard. Because I know what he's feeling, she said. I know what it's like to be trapped inside your own body. While the world keeps spinning outside, I know what it's like to need help to breathe, to swallow, to communicate. How do you know? Richard asked. Because my husband died of ALS 6 years ago. Her voice cracked slightly. And I took care of him myself for 2 years, from the diagnosis to his last breath, and I learned everything, every technique, every exercise, every little trick to maintain his quality of life for as long as possible. Her voice trembled, but she continued, and when he died, I swore that if I ever found someone going through the same thing, I would do for that person what I did for him, because no one should go through this alone, and your father was alone, surrounded by professional nurses and expensive equipment, but alone, because no one looked him in the eyes. Richard couldn't stop crying. Dr. Thompson couldn't either. And Lucy, this small woman in a blue uniform and calloused hands, stood there, firm, strong, filled with a dignity that money can't buy. I'm not going to stop doing this, she said firmly. You can fire me if you want, but as long as I work in this house, I'm going to take care of Mr. Ernest, because he needs it, and because I know how. Richard took a step forward, and he did something he had never done with any employee before. He hugged Lucy. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for doing what I should have been doing. Thank you for giving my father what I never gave him. Thank you for being what I wasn't. Lucy hesitated, then hugged him back. And there, in that hallway of a Bel Air mansion that cost $5 million, Something happened that money can't buy. Human connection. Real. True. Without pretense. When they separated, Dr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Lucy, I need to ask you a question. Professional one." She turned to him. "Would you be willing to teach me what you know?" He asked. "I treat 15 ALS patients, and none of them have someone who does for them what you do for Mr. Ernest. If you taught me, if you documented your techniques, I could train caregivers, I could spread this." Lucy blinked, surprised. "I'm not a doctor," she said. "I don't have a degree." "You have something better than a degree," the doctor said. "You have lived experience. You have knowledge acquired in pain. And in medicine, that's worth more than any certificate hanging on the wall." He paused. "I want to hire you as a consultant, to train caregivers, to teach families, to show the world that ALS isn't a death sentence. It's a condition that can be managed with love and technique. And you have both." Lucy remained silent for a long moment. Then she looked at Mr. Ernest, who was watching everything from his chair. She walked back to him, kneeling down again, holding his hands. "What do you think, Mr. Ernest?" she asked. "Should I do this?" Mr. Ernest blinked once. "Yes." And then his eyes moved to the communication board that Lucy had left on the small table. She understood. She picked up the sheet, positioned it in front of him. "Do you want to tell me something?" One blink. "Yes." And Mr. Ernest began to spell slowly, letter by letter, YOUAREANANGEL. "You are an angel." Lucy let the tears fall freely now. "I'm not an angel, Mr. Ernest," she sobbed softly. "I'm just someone who understands and who cares." But for Mr. Ernest and for Richard and for Dr. Thompson, she was exactly that. An angel disguised as a housekeeper. That week, Richard made several changes. The first was to promote Lucy from housekeeper to his father's official caregiver, with a tripled salary, not because she asked for it, but because it was right. The second was to dismiss the 3 professional nurses. They were technical, competent, but they didn't have what Lucy had: heart. The third was the most difficult. He cancelled his international expansion trip, rescheduled half of his meetings, and started coming home at 5 in the afternoon. Every day, to sit beside his father and learn from Lucy how to really care for someone. On the first day, he just watched. Lucy did the exercises with infinite patience: breathing, passive movements, circulatory massage, communication through blinks. Each movement had purpose, each word had intention. On the second day, she taught him, "Hold his hand like this," she instructed. "Feel his breath. Count with him. 1, 2, 3. Richard felt clumsy, inadequate, but Lucy was patient. "You'll learn," she said. "It's not about perfect technique. It's about being present. Your father doesn't need perfection. He needs you." On the third day, something extraordinary happened. Richard was doing the passive movements on his father's hands, finger by finger, as Lucy had taught him, and he was talking to him about little things, about the day, about old memories. "Do you remember, Dad, when you took me on that trip to Phoenix, Arizona?" Richard asked, his voice thick with emotion. "I was 12 years old. You had just bought that old car, and we drove all night just to see the sunrise in the mountains." Mr. Ernest blinked once. "Yes, I remember. I never thanked you for that," Richard continued, "for all the times you stopped your life to be in mine. And now, when you need me, I was too busy to stop mine." He felt a pang in his chest. "I'm sorry, Dad. Sorry for not being here. Sorry for letting a stranger show you more love than your own son." And then he felt it. Something moved in the hand he was holding. He looked down, and he saw it. His father's index finger moving slowly, painfully, but definitely, trying to squeeze his son's hand. "Dad," Richard whispered. "Are you moving, Mr.?" Ernest blinked once, and the finger moved again. With more strength this time, Richard shouted, "Lucy, come and see!" She rushed in, saw what was happening, and smiled with tears in her eyes. "I told you it would happen," she said softly. "Muscles remember when you give them a reason to remember." And Mr. Ernest's reason to remember was right there, holding his hand, finally present, finally seeing him, his son. Dr. Thompson visited 3 days later for the routine checkup, but when he examined Mr. Ernest, he saw something he hadn't expected. Movement in the fingers, small, but measurable. He looked at Richard. "How?" Richard pointed to Lucy. "Her." And the doctor smiled, because he knew he had seen it with his own eyes, he had documented it, he had recorded it, and now he had scientific proof of what he had always known as a human being. Love heals, not in a mystical sense, but in a practical sense. Constant presence, dedicated care, genuine attention. It keeps muscles active, keeps the mind engaged, keeps the will to live strong. And Lucy had given all of that, without charging, without expecting recognition, simply because it was the right thing to do. "You've changed everything," Dr. Thompson told her, "not just for Mr. Ernest, but for how I'm going to treat all my patients from now on." He turned to Richard. "I want to publish a paper on this, on the impact of compassionate care on the progression of ALS, and I want Lucy to be a co-author." Lucy shook her head. "I can't be a co-author. I'm not a doctor." "You're more than a doctor," Dr. Thompson said. "You're a lived experience expert. And in modern medicine, that voice is missing, the voice of someone who has actually lived it, who has cared, who knows not through theory, but through love." He opened his briefcase, took out a document. "I've already started writing, and your name will appear first, because without you there is no article. Without you there is no discovery. Without you, Mr. Ernest would be much worse, maybe already gone." Richard agreed. "She saved my father, and saved me too, because she taught me what really matters." And at that moment, Mr. Ernest wanted to speak. He looked at the communication board. Lucy saw it, picked up the sheet, positioned it. "You want to say something, Mr. Ernest?" A blink. "Yes," and he began to spell slowly, with effort, but with absolute determination. "ITWASNTHERWHOSAVEDME. It wasn't her who saved me. Everyone was silent, waiting. "ITWASGODWHOSENTHER. It was God who sent her." And Lucy, this woman of simple faith and a giant heart, knelt beside the chair, held Mr. Ernest's hands, and said something that no one in that room would ever forget. "If God sent me, it was because he knew I would understand, because he prepared me with pain, taught me with loss, and gave me purpose through your life. You're not here by accident, Mr. Ernest. You still have work to do, and I'm going to help you do it until the very last day." And she kept her word. In the following months, Richard Sterling's house was transformed, not physically. The same marble hallways, the same expensive furniture, the same privileged view of Bel Air, but everything was different, because now there was life there. Richard came home at 5 in the afternoon, religiously, no matter the meeting, no matter the deal. At 5 o'clock, he was by his father's side, and Lucy taught them, patiently, how to do the exercises, how to position the body, how to read the signs that Mr. Ernest gave with his eyes. She transformed Richard into a caregiver, not a professional one, but something better, a present son. 3 months after the discovery, Dr. Thompson published his paper. The title was simple but powerful: "The Impact of Compassionate Care on the Progression of Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis," a case study. And the first name on the article wasn't his. It was Lucy Miller's, lived experience expert in ALS care. The article was peer-reviewed, accepted, published in the American Journal of Neurology. and quickly gained international attention because the data was irrefutable. Mr. Ernest, who should have been in the terminal stage after 2 years of diagnosis, was stable, maintaining minimal movement in his fingers, communicating effectively through blinks. He had quality of life, and all because someone cared enough to dedicate 5 hours a day to keeping his humanity intact. The medical community reacted, some skeptical, others fascinated, but everyone wanted to know more. So, Dr. Thompson did something revolutionary. He created a training program and put Lucy as the main instructor. Once a month, caregivers from all over Los Angeles came to the Sterling mansion, and Lucy taught them, not in a classroom, but right there, in Mr. Ernest's room, with him as an unwilling professor. She showed them the breathing exercises, the passive movements, the blink communication, the correct positioning, the suctioning of secretions, everything. And Mr. Ernest participated, blinking yes or no when Lucy asked, "Does this help you?" He always blinked once, yes. The caregivers left transformed, not only with technical knowledge, but with something deeper, informed compassion, technique with heart. And the families of their patients noticed. The patients lived better, longer, with more dignity. 6 months after the publication of the article, Richard made a decision that would change hundreds of lives. He created the Mr. Ernest Sterling Foundation, dedicated to compassionate care for ALS patients and their families, with Lucy as Director of Care Programs. Her salary was now 10 times what she earned as a housekeeper, but she continued doing the same thing, taking care of Mr. Ernest 5 hours a day, every day, because it wasn't about money. It never was. A year after that appointment that changed everything, Dr. Thompson returned for a routine examination. He brought with him a colleague, a neurologist from Stanford, one of the leading ALS experts in the world. They examined Mr. Ernest together, checked reflexes, respiratory capacity, residual muscle strength, cognitive function, and when they finished, the American expert turned to Dr. Thompson with an incredulous expression. 2.5 years since the diagnosis, and he's like this, communicative, engaged, with residual movement in his fingers? Dr. Thompson pointed to Lucy, who was in the corner of the room, organizing the equipment. "Ask her." The expert approached. "You're the caregiver." Lucy nodded. "I am. Can you tell me, what are you doing that's keeping this patient stable for so long?" And Lucy, with her characteristic humility, replied, "I just treat him like a human, not a disease. He's still Mr. Ernest, still a father, still a man who has stories, memories, emotions. And as long as he has a voice, even if it's through blinks, I will listen." The specialist was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Dr. Thompson. "You were right, doctor. This needs to be global standard of care, not an exception, standard." And so began a small revolution. Not in the headlines, not on the news, but in the quiet rooms where ALS patients struggled to maintain their dignity. Caregivers around the world began to learn Lucy's techniques, not through medical manuals, but through videos she recorded, showing each exercise, each positioning, each communication technique, and always, always, always emphasizing the same thing. Treat them as humans, not as patients, as people with stories. 18 months after the discovery, Mr. Ernest did something that no one expected. It was a Thursday. Richard was doing the exercises with him. Lucy was there, supervising, and Mr. Ernest suddenly looked at the communication board. Lucy picked it up, positioned it. "You want to talk, Mr. Ernest?" A blink, "Yes." And he started to spell, slowly, but with determination. "I-W-A-N-T-T-O-T-A-L-K-T-O-C-A-R-E-G-I-V-E-R-S. I want to talk to caregivers." Richard and Lucy exchanged glances. "How?" Mr. Ernest continued. "VIDEO, video. And so was born the Foundation's most impactful project, videos of Mr. Ernest, not talking because he couldn't, but communicating through blinks, with Lucy translating, and in those videos, he said things that broke hearts and healed souls. I'm still here, trapped, but here. And when someone treats me as a person, not as a disease, I remember that my life still has value. The first video was seen by more than 50,000 caregivers around the world, and the comments were devastatingly powerful. I needed to hear this. My father has ALS, and I was only seeing the disease. Now, I'm going to see the man. I've been a professional caregiver for 15 years, and this video taught me more than all my training. Thank you for reminding us that patients are people. And Mr. Ernest, this man who thought his life had ended the moment of diagnosis, discovered that it was just beginning in a new way. He could no longer perform surgeries, but he was saving lives in another way, giving hope, giving dignity, giving a voice to thousands of people trapped in their own bodies. 2 years after that consultation that changed everything, Dr. Thompson organized an event, a symposium on compassionate care in neurodegenerative diseases. 300 healthcare professionals attended from 15 different countries. And the keynote speaker wasn't a doctor with decades of experience. It was Lucy Miller, a housekeeper, a widow, an experiential specialist. She took to the stage, wearing the same blue uniform she always wore. Not because she didn't have others, but because she wanted everyone to remember, you don't need a degree to make a difference. You need compassion. And she spoke for 40 minutes about techniques, about positioning, about communication, about the importance of seeing the person, not the disease. And when she finished, 300 healthcare professionals stood up and applauded, not out of politeness, but because they had just learned something that no medical school teaches, that healing isn't just about medications and procedures, it's about seeing, hearing, being present. At the end of the talk, a young female resident approached Lucy, with tears in her eyes. My mother has ALS, and I, who am a doctor, didn't know how to care for her. Thank you for teaching me. Lucy hugged the young woman and whispered, now, go home, sit next to her, hold her hand, and let her know that you see the woman, not the disease. And the doctor went and did exactly that. And her mother, for the first time in months, blinked with a smile in her eyes. 3 years after Mr. Ernest's diagnosis, the Foundation had trained more than 2,000 caregivers, impacted more than 5,000 families, and changed care protocols in 8 countries, all because a 48-year-old woman in a blue uniform and calloused hands decided that no one should go through ALS alone. And Mr. Ernest, he was still there, stable, communicative, living, not because medicine cured him. Medicine can't cure ALS, but because someone cared enough to keep his humanity intact. And on a winter afternoon, 4 years after that first consultation that surprised Dr. Thompson, Mr. Ernest asked to speak. Lucy picked up the board, positioned it. Richard was there too, and the doctor, who now visited not only as a neurologist, but as a friend. You want to say something, Mr. Ernest? A blink. Yes. And he started to spell slowly, as always, but with the same determination as always. THANKYOULUCY. Thank you, Lucy. FORGIVINGMEFOURMOREYEARS. For giving me 4 more years. BUTABOVEALL. But above all, FORGIVINGMEDIGNITY. For giving me dignity. Lucy couldn't hold back the tears. I didn't give you anything, Mr. Ernest. I just treated you as you deserved to be treated, as a human. Mr. Ernest blinked once, and then continued spelling. THAT. That is all. And it was. In the end, it wasn't the expensive medications. It wasn't the imported equipment. It wasn't the renowned specialists. It was someone who saw the man, not the disease. Someone who dedicated time, not because they were paid to, but because they cared. Someone who knew, from personal experience, that dignity is the last right we have, and that no one should have to fight alone to maintain it. Dr. Thompson looked at Lucy that day and said something that summed it all up. You're not a housekeeper, Lucy. You never were. You're an angel in disguise, and I will be honored to have worked by your side for the rest of my career. And Lucy, with her characteristic humility, just smiled and went back to Mr. Ernest's side, because there were still exercises to do, there was still breathing to monitor, there was still communication to facilitate, there was still life to honor. Today, 5 years after that diagnosis, that should have been a death sentence in 18 months. Mr. Ernest is still here, living with dignity, communicating through blinks, moving fingers when concentrated. Richard learned to be a father to his father and discovered that the time he spends with him is the most valuable time of his life. Dr. Thompson expanded the program to 17 countries, and Lucy has trained more than 5,000 caregivers personally. And every day, in rooms around the world, ALS patients are treated not as diagnoses, but as people with stories, with dignity, with value. All of this happened because one woman decided that practical love is worth more than any degree. And if you've made it this far, you've understood something fundamental about life. It's not the money you earn, it's not the titles you acquire, it's not the status you accumulate, it's how you treat people when they can no longer do anything for you. It's whether you look them in the eyes, whether you hold their hands, whether you see them as human, even when their body fails them. Lucy Miller was never just a housekeeper. She was always a caregiver, a teacher, a silent revolutionary. And Mr. Ernest was never just an ALS patient. He was always a father, a mentor, a man with stories that still mattered. And Richard Sterling was never again the absent CEO. He became a present son, truly present. Because in the end, as Lucy always said, life isn't measured in years. It's measured in moments of dignity. And as long as there is dignity, there is life. And that is the story of how a housekeeper did what millions of dollars couldn't. She didn't cure ALS. No one can. But she gave something much more precious. She gave quality time. She gave a voice to those who couldn't speak. She gave dignity to those whom the world had forgotten. And if that isn't a miracle, then miracles don't exist.